Hey guys, JB here from Alpha Wolf Consulting, coming to you today with the next session in the Alpha Wolf Personal Development and Expansion series. So, this session is going to be all about understanding creating an identity or a separate identity for your subconscious mind. So, we understand that the identities that we have in terms of this identity of me is the ego. So the conscious mind. So that's what the ego is. The ego is the representation of our conscious mind or our conscious self. So essentially, what we realize, the more we understand about the higher consciousness and the sort of understanding, you know, the ego is not me, it is a representation of my conscious mind. So to all those people who believe that they are their ego, in every aspect of life, you can see how weak it makes them. Do you sort of get it? Because it's a representation of one half of the brain, and they're claiming that it is the whole brain. So we understand the higher consciousness is our direct consciousness or the direct link to the collective consciousness that we have within our conscious awareness. However you want to see it, we can see it as our consciousness, we can see it as our soul, whatever representation you want it to be. So we understand that it's quite malleable for our brains or the hemispheres of our brains, as the hemispheres of our brains are simply tools that our higher consciousness utilizes to be able to interact throughout the world. So, what is the purpose of the ego? The ego has a purpose of being able to communicate, being able to understand and conceptualize everything that is around me. Without the ego, I wouldn't be able to communicate because the ego is simply my conscious awareness of my conscious side of my brain, the left hemisphere. All right. So, with the subconscious mind, if we do not do the same and we do not understand the subconscious mind, okay, what happens is our emotions, our behaviors, our reactions, our instincts are unaware to us. So, this whole practice of creating a second identity within myself or my mind, okay, helps me to identify and create a link between my conscious awareness and my subconscious awareness. So we understand that, many people will say whatever they want to say about blah, 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 that there's only one me in this body and blah, 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 blah. To understand this is to understand there is only one me, and that is the higher consciousness. That is the only aspect of me that feels alive. In the context that should I pick up a shovel, that shovel is not a part of me, but I can utilize that shovel being a tool as a part of me. Do you sort of get it? The ego is not me. It is a tool I use. The subconscious identity or the subconscious mind is not me. It is a tool I use. I am not my behaviors. I am not my emotions. I am not my subconscious manifestations of action and behavior. Do you sort of get it? It's pretty fun when we get it. So the whole goal of this session and this sort of understanding of creating a secondary identity for our subconscious mind is that should you ever want to or need to push further than your ego understands is humanly possible, You have to create an identity that has the capacity to do it. Whatever in life we believe as being achievable becomes achievable. Whatever in life I believe my limitations as being become my limitations. So should I believe that the ego is only ever me and I am only ever this one conscious awareness? What happens is I have no control over my emotions. I have no control over my subconscious routines of my behaviors. I have no access to my subconscious memory. I have no access to my subconscious processing. Does this sort of make sense? So when we understand this, we understand that majority of fucking psychologists are self-limiting when they talk their shit about this and that. And if you hear voices in your mind, you're schizophrenic. Like, if you hear voices in your mind, you're talking to yourself. Like, it's not something external to you. It can be something external when we get into understanding higher forms of consciousness and communicating with the collective consciousness that is life, that is the universe, that is God. So it's to understand that when we are thinking within the aspect of the conscious and the unconscious mind, these are two separate minds that run separate patterns. I don't think about breathing, I breathe. If breathing is not in my conscious thought patterns and conscious awareness, who is controlling it? My subconscious mind. That is separate thoughts, behaviors, and actions happening without conscious awareness, i.e., a separate conscious identity. Do you sort of get it? It's a funny thing because I personally am very fascinated about the human mind, and I love listening to psychology, philosophy, and all of this. And I have heard so much shit from psychologists about how they understand the human mind, blah, 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 blah. Yet none of them have ever trialed it, none of them have ever experienced it. Do you know what I mean? You can hear it because someone who has never experienced cannot talk through personal experience. They can only ever talk through facts, through what the literature says, of what every other smart person who has said, blah, 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 whatever. Like, to all I always say, if you want to self-limit yourself, I will never stop you. Why? Why would I stop you from self-limiting yourself? Your self-limiting of yourself does not affect me. So why would it bother me if you want to see the world as only ever being 3D and material, as only ever being this experience, this physical experience? Do you sort of get it? Like, it doesn't matter. So whatever people say is what people say. Whatever people want to believe is what people want to believe. Do you know what I mean? If I'm telling myself that I hear voices and those voices tell me to hurt other people, and then I go out and hurt other people, well, that's not a right thing to do. So we understand that there is a separation between if I believe something and that belief, one second, people keep messaging me. That belief, if my belief is to interfere, oppress, and use my knowledge, my wisdom, my power, whatever over other people. We all know that that's wrong. So we do not accept people who say, you know, voices told me to take negative actions and blah, blah, blah. That's just wrong. Do you sort of get it? If we're not hurting other people and we are staying in our own lane, we are free to do, believe whatever we want to believe. It doesn't really matter. Majority of these psychologists don't really understand psychology. They understand the literature, but they don't actually understand the human mind. And many of them can argue and this, that, and the other, and whatever. Do you sort of get it? Like, I use these practices on a daily basis. I used these practices when I was walking across country. Do you sort of get it? Like, I've used them. I know they work. I know they're real. It doesn't really matter what anyone else says. Do you sort of get it? It doesn't matter. Why? Because I've experienced it. So I don't need to collate and externally validate what I'm saying as being true. I've already internally validated it. I know it. I've seen it. I've touched it. I've smelt it. I've tasted it. I've felt it. Do you sort of get it? So we understand when I believe, and this is why belief is so important, because beliefs are just thoughts on repeat. If I tell myself that I have a separate identity for my subconscious and I re-ingrain that and I re-ingrain that and I give power to that separate conscious awareness, okay, what happens is it becomes real. Should I ingrain that I am only the ego, that I am only this conscious mind, this conscious awareness, this physical body, I ingrain it and it becomes a belief. That's the funny thing. Beliefs, truths, all of this, they're not real. What I believe is being true in life is just something I have told myself again and again and again and again. That's how the human mind works. Many people I have heard say that beliefs are these real things, just like our values, our core values that we all hold. You realize they're not real. They're real to us, but they're not real to other people. Why? Because they're internal, not external. And this is the funny thing when it comes to the human mind. So many of these so-called experts act as if the external is what is real, not the internal. When it comes to the mind, there is no external. And what that means is the human mind does not alter and shape the external environment outside of the internal environment, i.e., I do not change and shape my environment through thought. My thought alters and shifts my perspective and what I notice within my environment, shifting and altering my perception of my environment. And that's what's so funny because so many people in life talk shit. It's so funny. And they all have these ideas that our thoughts influence the external environment. That's like if you're depressed and I think positively for you. Now, granted, in quantum mechanics with quantum entanglement, thoughts can influence physical matter, but not to the point where I can change an electron into a neutron, if that's even a thing. Who knows? I'm not a scientist. But do you sort of get it? Like, I can't go out there and change the sun into the moon by thinking the sun is the moon. But should I transfer and think positively, I can positively influence your thoughts. Do you sort of get it? I can negatively influence your thoughts. And how we understand this in the, sorry, how we understand this in the physical world, in the physical environment, in reality is, should I look at you with negative intention and thought in my eye, you can pick it up in my body language, in my tonalities and the language that I use, in my eye contact, in my facial expressions, in the energy that I give off. And that can alter and shift your perception or view of yourself. So it's not to say that if I think that you're a son of a bitch, you're a son of a bitch, go trip over and fall and break your leg. it's not going to do anything. You're not going to go and fall and trip and break your leg. Do you sort of get it? But if I sit there and I stare at you and I say all negative things and I think negative things and I act vilely and I use negative tonalities of aggression and anger and disgust and all of this, it will influence how you feel about yourself. Why? Because 80% of our communication is subconscious, not conscious. So while consciously it won't affect you, subconsciously it will, because you're not aware of your subconscious mind. That is why it is important, I have found, to have an identity for the subconscious, so that I have a single point of contact in my mind that I can talk with and work through these problems and programs, these thought programs that influence and infect my mind from other people. And to anyone that wants to argue that this isn't true, like by all means, like all you have to do is watch mainstream TV, watch the media, listen to politicians, listen to all the vileness of what people focus on in life, and see how it influences your subconscious thoughts, your emotions and feelings about yourself, creating lack, creating negativity, creating negative thought patterns. If I listen to people who talk negatively day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, that will condition and influence the way in which my thought patterns arise or are created in terms of the structure of those thought patterns. Just to the same, if I do it with positivity, it will. So it's this idea that should I identify that my thought patterns are negative, well, if I focus on consuming positive content, positive language, and all of this, day in, day out, day in, day out, day in, day out, it will ingrain within my subconscious mind. Trust me, I have done this. So, an easy practice to do if you ever want to experience this is when you go to the gym and work out, when you do any form of exercise, instead of listening to music and treating it as entertainment, listen to motivational speeches and speeches of empowerment on repeat for 2, for 3, for 4 hours a day. 7 days a week for 365 days, and tell me what happens to your subconscious mind. Trust me, I've done this. What happens? Those speeches, those motivational speeches, those positive speeches run on pattern in your subconscious mind. I can hear them right now. Do you sort of get it? So what we understand is the way the human mind works is through conditioning and brainwashing. The more I do something, the stronger those synaptic pathways become. The more I listen to motivational speeches, the stronger the memory of those motivational speeches become. The memory is a synaptic pathway. What happens? Those memories run on loop in my subconscious mind, just to the same. Should someone say something nasty to me and I focus on it and I give it all my attention and I strengthen that subconscious pathway, it runs on loop in my subconscious mind. Am I aware of it? Not really. Why? Because the firing of that synaptic pathway is faster than my conscious awareness of that synaptic pathway being fired. Do you sort of get it? We don't control the subconscious mind through conscious awareness. But through conscious awareness, we can become aware of how the subconscious mind operates. But to make it more efficient, should I create an identity in my mind? An identity isn't creating another me. It is separating a portion of my subconscious mind or all of my subconscious mind to be in one point of contact in terms of when I create an identity for my subconscious mind, What I am essentially doing is creating a singular reference point for me to access my subconscious mind. And we can do this through meditation. We can do this through any form we want. So, for example, should I want to alter or understand my subconscious mind, I do not try to observe it. I ask it to show me, what do I want to change? If I feel negative every day and I want to feel positive, I ask it, why am I feeling negative? And then I observe the thought patterns that happen. I observe the different movements of my thoughts. I observe where my awareness is. And it's very complex, but it's also very, very simple. So, an important thing to understand is I do not need to know how the muscles move in my body to breathe. I just need to take a breath in and breathe out. I don't have to understand how my subconscious works to the nth degree and observe every aspect of my subconscious mind to control my subconscious mind. Should I want to root out any negative thoughts within my subconscious mind, then all I must do is ask it to do that. And it can do that. For I am not the micromanager. I am the delegator. I do not micromanage my mind. I delegate to my mind and direct my mind. For I am the higher consciousness that understands I am not my conscious awareness or my conscious mind, and I am not my subconscious mind. These are simply tools that my higher consciousness utilizes to understand and comprehend the world around me and move through it. Does it make sense? So when we understand creating a separate identity, this can be anything that you want it to be, and it is a representation of your inner self. So when we understand this, we are free to create whatever identity we want to create. We are free to give it as much or as little power or autonomy as we want it to have. Do you sort of get it? It doesn't matter if it's real, if it's not, if people agree, if people don't, because why? Because we understand whatever I tell myself to be true becomes true. Whatever I tell myself I believe becomes my beliefs. Beliefs are simply thoughts on repeats. Truths are simply like parcels of information or knowledge or ways of doing things or ways of being that I do not question because those synaptic pathways have become stronger. Do you sort of get it? There's no universal truth. And that's a funny thing. And we're not talking about arguing with scientists about laws of physics and all of this. Like, science is different. It's like understanding human nature, right? There is no truth behind human nature, but with high probability, we can predict how people are going to behave and act based on human nature, based on concepts like self-preservation. Do you sort of get it? If I leave food out on the front lawn and hungry people walk past that are starving to death, the likelihood that they take that food is quite high. Do you sort of get it? Like, we understand that if I was in that situation of starving and I walked past and saw food sitting around, I would take it. Do you sort of get it? Like, not to say that they would steal it, but we're just saying in human nature, we can predict what other people do based off how we would feel and behave and interact and react within those situations. So it's very important that no one's an expert and everyone's an expert. Why? Because no one has a different tool. Do you sort of get it? So it's very funny like this that a lot of people, especially I'm picking on psychologists today because psychologists are, in my eyes, like they've gone to university, they've learnt the literature, they've learnt the models, they've learnt the structures, but very few of them have ever applied it to their own mind. Why? I've talked to them, I've seen them. They don't know any more than we know. All they know is the literature. They don't understand how to access different forms of human consciousness, which in my mind, a psychologist would. A psychologist would be able to access every aspect of their human conscious awareness and different states of their mind at will. Majority of them can't. Majority of them can just run models. They can just recite literature. Do you know what I mean? Like, have you ever noticed that? That everyone, like, especially in psychology, it's pretty funny, but everyone refers back to Freud. Like, do you know what I mean? All their theories and theorems are based off what Freud said, not based off their own personal experience and personal experimentation. So, what does this mean? This means that they cannot think outside of the confines or the constraints that Freud has set. Do you know what I mean? Like, for example, if they refer back to Freud, yet they don't immensely believe that there is a universal God or a being or a consciousness that is all of life and all of the universe, then evidently they don't understand what Freud was saying. For Freud spent his lifetime trying to prove there was a God, but he couldn't because it's an impossible thing to prove. It's like trying to see air. We know air's there. We breathe the air. We will never see the air. I can sit there and I can look and I can make microscopes to try and see the air, but it's never going to happen. Why? Because it's not on the visual spectrum. Do you know what I mean? Like, that's the funny thing. That's why I pick on them. Because for all they say, they do not believe what Freud said. They believe what he said in terms of human psychology, but they don't believe what he said in terms of human experience. For wouldn't they all pray to God? Wouldn't they all worship God in their own way, like Freud did? Do you sort of get it? But most psychologists are atheists. That's the funny thing, because they're not psychologists, they're scientists. And I don't have anything against scientists. I don't have anything against psychologists. What I have against is posers, people who pretend other people's information is fact and truth, yet don't test, measure, or experience it. To be a psychologist, you should be able to take yourselves through the depths of hell and walk back out without becoming scathed by anything. But majority of them, I don't believe, have ever truly experienced hell. Listen to Jordan Peterson talk. He has experienced it. He understands it. He's explored his own mind. The majority of these other academic psychologists, they don't. They haven't. They're posers. Do you know what I mean? False virtue, fake virtue. They treat what Freud says as being above what you or I have experienced. And that's the funny thing. The funny thing is, they treat what other people or these academics or these experts or these blah, blah, blah have said over what human experience has shown. We all have access to the same tools in the mind. Do you sort of get it? Like there's no difference. No one's mind is different to another. Not to say the wiring isn't different, but physiologically, like your brain isn't structured different to mine with different chemicals and different, you know, atoms and particles and however you want to look at it. Like, do you sort of get it? Like we've all got human brains. We all have human experiences. Those experiences vary and differ, and our perception alters and shifts and changes based on the experiences that we have through life and the understandings that we come to. But in essence, we are all human beings. There are no separate races. So for someone to act as if their experience of life is any more valuable or their understanding is any more expertise than another's, they're just full of shit. Don't listen to them. They're posers. Why? Because if they weren't a poser, they would understand that everyone's in the exact same position. We've all got a mind. Some of us explore our mind more than others. Some of us seek to understand our mind. Some of us seek to experience our mind. Some of us seek to read literature and proclaim that literature as being truth and fact. Why? Because some fucking idiots all agreed that this is the truth. Do you sort of get it? Like, who are these people? I've studied psychology for the past 25 years. I know psychology. Have you? Take me through your thought process. Take me to the depths of hell of your mind. And let's go for a stroll and let's see how easy it is to get back out of there. Do you sort of get it? Like it's like these people like the Pope or the priests or the all these different religious figures. Majority of them do not understand spirituality any deeper than you or I. Why? Because we all have the exact same connection to life and the universe and God. Do you sort of get it? Like no one's got an upper hand, yet what do? They proclaim the literature is more or gives them more power than what you or I have experienced in our own human experience, in our own spiritual experience. Do you sort of get it? Like, that's the funny thing. That should we believe that the Pope has more answers about what it means to be a spiritual being than you or I? We are just full of shit. Do you sort of get it? Like, don't get me wrong. Like, scientists are completely different. Why? Because they're out there testing, experimenting, and all of this. Psychologists observe other people. They don't put themselves through these tests and then observe their own experience. Why? Because the academic world doesn't value personal experience over impartial experience of observed fact. Do you sort of get it? Like it's all just people jerking each other off, telling each other how great they are, blah, 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 blah. So we understand. If they want to say it's true, if they don't want to say it's true, who cares? What do you experience? What have you put to the test? Have you explored your mind? When we're creating a subconscious identity or a separate identity for our subconscious, it doesn't really matter. Do you sort of get it? Because whatever we create and we re-ingrain becomes our truth. Now, this is not never to say that it's okay to use our subconscious mind as a scapegoat for our behaviors or actions. So should someone take negative action and oppress and, hurt other people, there is no excuse for that. They have taken that action. They own that action. There is no justification for it. So we are not utilizing the subconscious mind as an excuse of being something outside of our conscious awareness in the context of our higher consciousness. Our higher consciousness is always aware of our mind. It's just, should I become ingrained that the conscious aspect of my mind, my ego, is me, and that my subconscious mind, my behaviors, and all of that is not me? Do you sort of get it? Like, that's the funny thing. So we understand that to truly explore our mind is a process of full accountability, of 100% accountability. Whatever the subconscious mind does, I have done. Whatever the conscious mind does, I have done. We are not creating scapegoats and creating weakness like many people try with addiction. Do you sort of get it? Nothing has a gun to your head saying you have to do this. And should it have a gun to your head saying you have to do this, you still have a choice to fucking take that bullet and die. No excuses. We never allow excuses because excuses are weakness and weakness corrupts. I.e., why do you think all those academic psychologists are corrupt, weak individuals? Because they're full of excuses. Do you sort of get it? It's funny because it's so easy to go on about them because a key thing to understand is whatever I put outside of my control, I cease to be aware of. When I devalue my own personal experience over academic reporting and academic validation, I cease to become aware of my own personal experience. I cease to become aware of my own personal behaviors. Do you sort of get it? It doesn't mean other people aren't aware of it. And that's one of the funny things that makes it so easy. Is one sec, that the more I pretend and convince myself that I am not the one in full control over my thoughts, over my behaviors, over my actions, the less I notice them, the more other people notice them. Have you ever noticed that with hypocritical people, fake virtuous people? They're unaware of their behavioral patterns and their traits, but it's clear to everyone else. It's easy to see to a trained eye. And a trained eye is just someone who doesn't talk shit to themselves, someone that takes accountability. Why? For if I do not take full accountability for my thoughts, behaviors, beliefs, and all of this, to someone who does, they know the truth that I am choosing not to. Do you sort of get it? That's what psychology is just understanding we are no different from each other. While we may think differently, while we may perceive our external environment differently, while we may understand and have different draws to different forms of information and knowledge, in essence, we are all the same. Like we all behave exactly the same. We all react exactly the same. And this isn't to say we are identical. It's just if I know how I react in certain situations, I can predict how other people would react in certain situations. It doesn't mean that it is going to be exact every time, because that's not the point of it. The point is understanding. And should someone behave or react differently to how I have predicted them to react, we do not dismiss that. We observe that to better understand. Do you sort of get it? So it's very important when we talk about this sort of stuff that we understand that your experience, my experience, is more valuable than what some dickhead wrote in a book that some academic has validated as being true, as being fact, as this is how it is. Do you sort of get it? Like we just understand. Whoever I want to create my subconscious mind's identity as becomes that identity. Whatever power I want to give it becomes that power. So we work out and we understand, what am I not aware of consciously in my behaviors, in my actions, in my thoughts? Do you sort of get it? In my emotions, in my feelings, all of that that I am not consciously aware of in every moment. That is what we give the power to the subconscious identity. Do you sort of get it? We delegate that to them because right now we're not fucking aware of it. We don't have any control over it. Should that identity exist? Should it not exist? It's not going to change anything. Why? Because we're not doing anything about it at the moment. Do you sort of get it? So, like, everyone can be pompous and up their own arse about this, that, and the other, but, like, in the truth, majority of people don't control their emotions. Why? Because they're not consciously aware of their emotions. So, what is there to lose by giving those emotions a conscious identity that is outside of my control? Do you sort of get it? Like, you got nothing to lose. Why? Because it's outside of your control already. It's just creating a point of reference or a point of contact for the ability to access the subconscious mind without having to observe it. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter if it's real, if it's not, if it's true, if it's false, if you believe it, if you don't believe it, whatever. It doesn't matter. Like, it's not important. Why? Because being right isn't the end goal in life. Experiences. So, should you create a subconscious identity and delegate aspects of your subconscious mind or your entire subconscious mind to that identity, and you experience it gives you value like I have, does it really matter if it's right or not? Not really. Why? Because I've experienced it. I know it's right. It doesn't really matter if other people agree or disagree or this or that. Like, that's the funny thing. That's why the psychologists are so full of shit, because they're trying to be right. They're not trying to experience it for themselves. So they have no conscious awareness or understanding of how it feels or how it is. Do you sort of get it? Freud had that experience because Freud wasn't sitting there referencing what other people said as being true and only believing what other people agreed with him and validated him as being true. He believes what he believed. He thought what he thought. It didn't really matter what other people think. Do you sort of get it? Do you sort of see how self-validation is the core to all personal development? It's the fundamental step. Why? because other people are full of shit, so much shit. All these fucking experts in life that tell you how life is and how it's got to be are so full of shit. So full of shit. Why? They don't know any different to us. They're no further along than us. When it comes to conscious awareness, we all have the exact same starting point. We all exist, we are all aware, and we all have the same brain. Do you sort of get it? Like we can pretend like academics and all these experts know so much more than us and know this and that, but they're so fucking full of shit. Do you know why? Because they're not allowed to talk in the first person. They're only ever allowed to talk in the third person. They're not allowed to use their own personal experience. They're only allowed to use observable facts because it's unbiased. Because personal experience is bias. Do you sort of get it? That's why they're full of shit. Because they refuse to accept an act, an aspect of experience because they believe that it creates bias in the results because they want unbiased results because they're detached. Do you sort of get it? Like, are you going to believe someone who hasn't personally experienced having their leg cut off that they understand what it feels like to have their leg cut off? Do you sort of get it? So if your leg's about to be cut off and they're advising you that it's the best course of action for you, are you going to fucking believe them? That they understand what's going to come next? No. Do you know what I mean? Not to say that doctors and health science isn't valuable, but it's this understanding that unbiased information is more valuable than biased information. We only understand and experience through our personal experience. We have nothing else. That's the funny thing. That's the hypocrisy of it. That's what makes it so easy to call them out for being full of fucking shit, is because they think that this experience that we have, this understanding, is worth less than what fucking academics say and agree is worth more. Do you sort of get it? They're so full of shit. So full of shit. Why? Like, I think I've explained it, but we can explain it again. We only comprehend the existence that we have in this life through our personal experience. Every sense organ that we have is designed for experiential data, not abstract data. My eyes don't see around me and say, I'm not seeing this unless 20 other people agree that this is what I see. Do you sort of get it? It's fucking ridiculous. It's hypocritical. Why did they do that? So that no one else could have power outside of them, so that they could control information. Now, many of them argue that it's so that information is unbiased, where 20 different people observe the same thing happening. But do you need 20 people to observe you feeling like you've fallen in love with the love of your life for you to experience falling in love with the love of your life? Like, if you do, by all means, see how great that goes for you in life. Do you need 20 people to agree that you're happy when you feel happy? Do you sort of get it? It's so fucking stupid. This whole system is so stupid because it's so full of shit. Do you know what I mean? We're not arguing that, you know, gravity isn't wrong, but Did fucking Newton or whoever created or came up with the hypothesis and the theory for gravity, did he go out there and say, I'm going to throw this apple up? Now, 20 of you have to observe that it falls down. Do you sort of get it? He didn't. He threw an apple up, he came up with a hypothesis, he presented that hypothesis, and they couldn't go and debunk it. Do you sort of get it? Science isn't about being right, science is about proving wrong. That's how the system is set up. Now, I am not arguing against that. But when it comes to the human body, to the human experience, to the human mind, they're full of shit. Why? Because if you have 20 people observing one person's experience, how do they understand what that person is going through? Are they taking turns jumping in that body and experiencing it for themselves? Are they going out and replicating the circumstances and the perception that creates that experience and then measuring it? No, they're not. That's why they're full of shit. It's so funny. Like our whole society has been designed to disempower this one and empower the minority in control, those in collusion. Why? Because they're not getting professional fucking data. They're only getting academic data. They don't value multiple different industries. They only value the academics within that field. Like it's an echo chamber of the same information, perspective, and understandings. It's so funny because they don't understand how weak it makes them. Should I sit in an echo chamber and only ever hear reverberated back to me what I'm saying? Do you think I can explore further than I currently know? Do you think I can understand different than I currently know? Do you sort of get it? So full of shit they are. So full of shit. And this isn't to say that I believe I'm right and I believe they're wrong. I don't really give a fuck. I've experienced it. Do you sort of get it? Like our own personal experience is worth more than what 20 or 30 so-called experts say is true. Do you know what I mean? Because I can bet you those 20 or 30 psychologists, if we go out into the field and we put human experience to the test, I promise you their mind will crumble before mine does. Why? Because I value the results and the information that I have gained through my experience as being true, not what other people have said as being true. I've explored the mind. I've explored my mind. I understand my mind. I understand what happens to my mind under extreme pressure. Do you know what I mean? It's so funny because they talk so much shit, yet you look at their lives and they're unhealthy. You look at their lives and they're mentally unstable. You look at their lives and they have no honor or value. They have no core values. Like that's the thing. They don't have honor. Look at Jordan Peterson. He has honor. He speaks the truth. Even when it makes him ostracized and they revoke his license to practice psychology because of his own personal beliefs. Do you sort of get it? It's so funny. They're so full of shit. Do you know what I mean? Because if you're an expert in psychology and I take you to the depths of the human experience and the misery of the human experience, your mind should never be able to crack. So if we break your body, your mind should still stand strong. Do you think any of these academic psychologists, as their body breaks, do you think their mind's going to be emboldened and strengthened? With all of the wisdom and all of the knowledge that they have, do you honestly believe it? Because I have seen these people. I know these people. I see straight through them. As their body breaks, their mind would crumble because they do not understand the mind. As my body breaks, my mind is empowered. Do you know what I mean? Even if it means my death, my mind does not falter. Why? Because I haven't built it on the illusions that other people know more than me. I have built it on the foundation of experience, personal experience. Do you know what I mean? It's very important to understand this because the more illusions we create and we empower within our lives and our minds, the weaker they become. The more I tell myself money makes me happy and all of this, the more depressed I become should money not make me happy. The more I tell myself other people know more than me, the less I value the knowledge and ability I have within myself. Do you sort of get it? It's a funny thing because if, like me, you do not seek validation externally and you just seek to build this one and understand this one, you are already far ahead of them. Why? Because you're not building upon illusions. You're building upon personal experience. Do you sort of get it? The weakest people in lives, and we can look at this in countries, and many geopolitical analysts will argue that, you know, authoritarian dictatorships and all of that, where they have echo chambers where people don't disagree with the one in power and all of that, create weaker economies, create weaker militaries, create weaker things. Like take Russia, for example. They're meant to be the second most effective military on the planet. They're meant to have the second best weaponry on the planet, the most advanced weaponry. Yet they have shown that through corruption and ignorance, that was all an illusion. How did they go in Ukraine? How are they going? With all of their might, with all of their weaponry, with all of their perceived strength, perceived knowledge, perceived skill, how are they going in reality? Do you sort of get it? Weakness creates corruption. When I create illusions and base my foundation on illusions, I create weakness. The more illusions I create, the more or the higher the corruption is increased. The more corruption there is, the more that's eroded from within me, i.e., take our education systems. They are so fucking pathetic at the moment. They are so fucking stupid. I've been to university, it's so full of shit. Where it's not the value of the information you present, it's the accuracy you present information that the professor or the lecturer wants you to promote. So it doesn't matter how much you understand the subject. If you don't present the information how the lecturer wants it to be presented, you are marked down for that. Even if you're right, even if your information is factual, do you sort of get it? It's weakness. Why? Because we're not teaching people and transferring knowledge and information. We are teaching them This is how it has to be. If you do not get it exactly how it has to be, you are wrong. In the real world, that doesn't fly. Do you sort of get it? The real world's more about grit, determination, and consistency. It doesn't care how it has to be. Do you know what I mean? I can theorize the most effective way to create a training regime to build muscles, or I can go out there and just build muscles. Both of them get to the exact same result. Now, many bodybuilders, and you can see it back in the 80s when Mr. Olympia was becoming really big and all of that in the 90s. Like, there are many different theories on building muscles, and many observed, and many of the bodybuilders experimented and came with different formulas to get to the same result. It doesn't really matter if one is slightly more effective than the other. Like, they all work, they all get to the same result. Like, it doesn't really matter. Some people ate high carb diets and they trained little. Some people ate low carb diets, they trained a lot. Some people ate high protein diets. Some people eat highly processed food diets and they get the same results. Majority of them took steroids. Is there a common denominator? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, who knows? What I know is that it doesn't really matter if you put out the work the muscles build. If you fuel the body has fuel. Does it really matter if someone has a more scientific approach to it where they don't want to train longer? Like, do you sort of get it? Like, why are you training? If we're creating like this bodybuilder regime to lift weights, are we only lifting weights to look good, or are we lifting weights to be strong? Are we lifting weights to put out power? Are we lifting weights to build endurance? Like, what's the end goal? Because I can promise you, someone that trains 15 minutes a day, 3 days a week, has nothing on someone who trains 3 hours a day, 7 days a week. Why? Because the person that trains 3 hours, 7 days a week, their body's conditioned to be able to put out more effort, more endurance. Do you sort of get it? So, like, what are we training for? Are we training for survival or are we training to look pretty? If we're training to look pretty, it doesn't really matter. If we're training for survival, if I can only do 15 minutes of work every 3 days, well, I'm kind of fucked, aren't I? Do you sort of get it? Like, do you know what I mean? If I'm training my mind to sound good and not to, or to look good and not to actually be pure and clean, like if it's all talk about these ideas of psychology and understanding the conscious and the unconscious mind and the higher consciousness, if I'm just saying this and doing this so that I look and present better and blah, 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 and I haven't experienced the depths of hell of my own mind, what happens when someone takes me to the depths of hell? My mind crumbles. So just understand that there's a big difference between walking through hell and coming out on the other side and pretending like I've been through hell and pretending like I've come out on the other side. Poses are easy to observe, or they're easy to see. Why? As soon as life goes against them, as soon as they realize they're in hell, their mind starts to crumble. They start looking for the way out. They start panicking. This is the important thing. When we condition our mind in hell, we are not somewhere we do not want to be. We are not in the unknown. Should someone drag us back into hell, we are very comfortable there. Do you know what I mean? Should I pose and pretend like I've been through hell and pretend that I've walked the path? Should someone take me to hell? Oof, it's a very frightening and scary place where I don't know the direction out. I don't know where I'm going to go. I don't know how difficult every step's going to be. So just remember that. Poses are easy to see. They don't talk through personal experience. They talk through what experts say is true and what is agreed by everyone else. And they're funny. Should you build your mind based off what posers say, you will have the mind of a poser. Should I drag you into hell, it will be clear and evident, for you will be panicking every step of the way. So just understand that we've all been through our own versions of hell in this life. We've all experienced our own versions of negative and bad things. So we are all experts in our own mind. Value your own knowledge, your own experience over what other people say. Because other people's bullshit isn't going to help you when you find yourself in hell. But that experience of you going through hell, it's worth more than gold. It's going to be more comforting to you, for you already know the way. Do you sort of get it? All right. Well, I hope you enjoyed this one. And I love picking apart academics and poses because they're so easy. Because all it is, the same as yesterday with the religions, they're just fake, false, virtuous people. They're not competent. There's a difference between competence and virtue. Always remember that what other people say as being right and true does not trump your own personal experience because you experienced that. Do you sort of get it? Who knows if they did? Do you know what I mean? Majority of the ones that reference Freud and all of this, they never experienced it. They don't understand it. They never looked deep into the abyss of their own shadow. They didn't walk with their own shadow through the hellscape of their own mind and come out on the other side, not walking with their shadow, but walking within their shadow, together and separate, one consisting of two. Do you sort of get it? The hellscape of your mind and the shadow that is within you is you. You do not walk with it as it, but you walk with it as you and it, as one, together in union, but also separate. It's important to understand this. To understand this is what gives you the power of full control over your own mind. All right. Well, you guys have an amazing day. And I'll talk to you on the next one. Thanks so much. Bye.